And welcome. We're live. This is the Jim Masters Show, live entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series. Hope you guys are doing well from wherever you're watching all around planet Earth. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have our international audience, our lovely squad who watches, who comments. They're very interactive during our broadcasts, and we love that. If you'd like to be interactive right now with us here on the Jim Masters Show, you can. How? Just subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. This is the channel you're watching right now. It's the channel that houses over 900 plus episodes of our entertaining series here, where we bring everybody together from Broadway and Hollywood and television and film and music and stage and culinary arts, sports, comedy, inspiration, and so much more. I'm really excited about our guest tonight because we sort of speak the same language, working in the same industry. He's had an opportunity to work with so many legendary people and know them personally, and have opportunities to write about their lives and celebrate them on extraordinary levels. We're talking about Herbie J Pilato. He's joining us from Hollywood, Los Angeles, from California. And we're going to talk about his illustrious collection of great reading material, his fabulous books, and his extraordinary career working in the broadcast media world and in television as a TV historian, TV executive, writer and producer, author, and so much more. Just somebody who really loves the art of the craft. And I do. You guys, again, know I work in the industry myself, in television, in radio, stage and film. So when I had an opportunity to invite Herbie J to stop by JMS to celebrate television and the icons and the shows we grew up with, and some of the newer material as well, and all the great movies, he said, Jim, I want to hop on JMS. Let's have a good time. And we will. If you'd like to comment during the show, all you have to do, again, is subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. That costs nothing. And when you do that, you can actually comment right now in what we call the JMS Lovety Hall chat room. We have a chat room. We're very, you guys know I'm an interactive host. Those of you who watch all the time, I love the interactivity, just like you're a studio audience in the TV studio from watching around the world. You might not be here, but you are virtually. So we welcome you to comment and celebrate all these great iconic celebrities and shows and so much more, and our illustrious guests. So you can comment if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can say hello to one another, and you can say hello to us. And we might even sprinkle in one or two of your comments during the course of our show. So again, truly, thanks for all the support, all the love, all of the posting on social media. I'm at Jim Masters TV on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and our show, of course, on YouTube at Jim Masters TV. We appreciate all of the enthusiasm, all the wonderful emails and tweets and Facebook messages, and sharing the links on your social media. We really, really appreciate that. And for your viewership, for being here as often as you are. If this is your first time here, we welcome you to Lovety Hall and to the Jim Masters Show live series. I see lots of comments already coming in here. This is absolutely fantastic. Keep them coming. Let me tell you about our illustrious guest, who again is a TV aficionado unlike any other. Herbie J is extraordinary. As I mentioned, TV historian, but also a TV executive, writer, and producer, pop culture expert extraordinaire. His background is incredible, and we're so excited to celebrate it here. Producer, writer, TV personality as well. He has worked for Sony and Warner Brothers, NBC Universal, Bravo, TLC, A&E, I mean, just about all of them, and many, many more. In 2010, he founded the Classic TV Preservation Society. I love that. That's a formal 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the positive social influence of classic television programming. Gang, if you are fans of classic television, all the shows you love, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, The Munsters, Dick Van Dyke Show, I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners, and on and on and on. Here is your episode, because again, he celebrates that and so much more. And again, it really is an honor to have him here. Tell you a little bit more about his incredible positive influence. His extensive list of pop culture media tie-in books includes Retroactive Television, The 12 Best Secrets of Christmas, Celebrity Biographies of Mary Tyler Moore, Elizabeth Montgomery, and many, many more. He's written for the Television Academy and Emmys.com, Closer Weekly. Of course, you know that magazine. He served for over 25 years as a contributing editor to Larry Brody's prestigious TVWriter.com. In 2019, he hosted and co-executive produced Then Again with Herbie J Pilato, the hit classic TV talk show on Amazon Prime and, of course, Shout Factory TV. He's appeared as a cultural commentator on a number of television documentaries and DVD and Blu-ray releases, including the Saturn Award-winning Blu-ray series of The $6 Million Man. Herbie J has also appeared on CNN's acclaimed 8-part series. Did you see it? They sometimes re-air this on CNN, some of those specials on music and classic television and so much more. He appeared on the CNN series, which again, I recommend you see when they do air it, History of the Sitcom. Maybe you did see it. Yeah, you probably recognize him from that. Also, soon seen in the Reel channels. Reels, of course, you know, Reels is a terrific one for biographies and more. The new documentary, Elizabeth Montgomery, A Bewitched Life, for which he also served as a co-writer and co-executive producer. He was also a friend of Elizabeth Montgomery, knew her personally. We'll talk about that. His new biography on Sean Connery, we published in the fall for the 40th anniversary of Never Say Never Again, Connery's final bow as James Bond. And he just completed a new biography of Diana Rigg. He's working on a new combined book about George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and their blockbuster films, and a new Christmas TV memories book, while he also readies his new Christmas music CD. Now, you guys know we love Christmas here on the show. We've had a lot of artists, musicians and singers and songwriters too, who even in July as a guest on our show, we get them to play a little Christmas. That's exciting. We're going to tell you about all of these projects, his love of television, his love of broadcast media, and so much more. But we've got a little video montage of some of his work that we wanted to show you. And then we will welcome live from LA, from Hollywood, from California, our illustrious guest. Herbie J Pilato is here on the Jim Masters Show Live. Don't move an inch. Take a look at this, and we'll be back. How cool is that? And here he is, Herbie J, joining us. Herbie J, welcome to the Jim Masters Show, my friend. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Jim, thank you. That was probably the best introduction I've ever had in my life.
Thank you very much. As my father has always said, and I've said this many times on this show, whenever he told us this, the sage advice when we were like 8, 9 years old, whenever anybody says something kind or nice to you, Jim, ask them to please put it in writing and address it management.
Will do.
Will do. So you're a New York kid out in LA. Tell us about growing up in New York and the background and how that may have influenced your love of television and broadcast media and movies and everything creative as you so brilliantly have made a career out of.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I grew up in Rochester, New York, which is upstate near Buffalo and Niagara Falls.
Oh, yeah. You love snow.
I did. And I must have it at Christmas. I will say that.
Yes.
I must have it at Christmas. But yeah, I had a beautiful family, large Italian Italian-American family. Both my mother and father had several brothers and sisters. So every night was a party because there were cousins and cousins of cousins. And, it was just that type of home. We were the hub of the family, of the extended family. And it was the inner city, so it was kind of tough. We didn't have a lot of money. And I was definitely that kid that said, hey, let's put on a show. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
that one in the neighborhood. We used to live in like a factory neighborhood where there was the original Xerox offices, believe it or not,
Oh,
right
yes.
across the street.
Yeah,
Um,
Kodak too, Rochester, right?
Eastman Kodak up the block. I was right there. And so they
Yeah.
would all have these docks, where the trucks would come. So we'd hop on the docks and we'd put on shows.
Wow. We used to do that too. We used to do it in our bedrooms. We did plays in the garage with the neighborhood kids. And
The living room.
yeah, and you take the blankets and the sheets and you make them into like the curtain that opens. And then mom would say, "Are you using my good sheets?"
Yeah, right. That's right. That's
So
right.
you grew up watching Rochester television, the local affiliates for CBS, NBC, ABC, and all. And when did you realize that you had this passion and thirst and interest in television, in broadcast media, in the shows and the people involved in the shows and just the whole industry? Was that for me? I was a kid. I was always running around with the Panasonic cassette recorder, the microphone, doing interviews. I knew all the station call letters. I knew who the news anchors were, all of that stuff. I would watch the sign on and the sign off, and then the Pledge of Allegiance or Star Spangled Banner when they would sign off. TV kid, of course. How about for you?
Yeah, I guess, the 60s was a tough time. There was the Vietnam War, there was the civil rights and race rioting, there was the drug, revolution, whatever that was, the sexual revolution as well. So I think we were all trying to find ourselves, especially after JFK was assassinated, Martin Luther King. There was a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
So there were shows like Bewitched, I, Jimmy Genie, Munsters, as you mentioned, Star Trek, Green Acres, Twilight Zone early on. But it was amazing escapist fare. And I get upset when people are like, well, it was really silly little sitcoms. And that's not
Oh,
true. That is
no,
not true.
no.
Those shows were made like half-hour little movies. And certainly when it came to Bewitched, you had people like Bernard Slade, who went on
Yes.
at the same time next year, and Danny Arnold, who went on to do Barney Miller. So there were all these different shows that came at the right time that we were all clinging to. Again, my neighborhood was, tough, and I would get beat up a lot. I would, because I was that cute little kid who could sing and dance,
Yeah.
and and it was not always easy. So I gravitated to shows like Bewitched or Star,
Hmm.
where there was a great escape.
There was always that sort of rivalry, I guess, and it was probably more fan rivalry between the Bewitched followers and the I Dream of Jeannie followers. I loved both, and I think those shows were so beautifully and perfectly cast. Everybody from Uncle Arthur with Bewitched to Hayden Rock as Dr. Bellows on I Dream of Jeannie. Just the casting was so perfect, and even though these were situation comedies, you could almost believe in the characters as far as being real. When you look at these shows, when you look at the Dick Van Dyke Show and some of these others, spectacular. We had Larry Matthews on recently,
Uh,
and
Love
Doug
Larry.
Goff and David Van Dusen. They were all with us, and the characters seem so believable, so real, and you get so invested in them, like the soap opera audience does with their characters, and they're invested for 30 years with their characters. What do you think it is about the television, especially classic television, that still resonates today, why these reruns can last 30, 40, 50, 60 years and still sometimes, even though, they're not always evergreen, they still have a commonality that we can connect with even today?
Well, a couple things. I mean, the Dick Van Dyke Show was probably the most perfect sitcom in the history of television. Certainly, I Love Lucy was terrific, but the special qualities. that they did not really designate any time period. Or, Carl Reiner had said, and I'm sure you might have discussed this with Dave Van Dusen or Larry, that there were no pop culture references that were made on that show of that era, because they knew that if it would go into syndication or reruns, then that would be dated, and they did not want to date the show. So why did those shows make it? And what were so different about all of the programs in the 60s as opposed to today? Well, there were happy endings. All right. There was likability. I think a key word is charm. There's not a lot of charm on the TV shows that you see today. There's a lot of talent and there's a lot of great storytelling, but the way they present it is troublesome to me. Everyone mumbles. The
Yeah.
lighting is dark. Everything
Yes.
is edgy. There are
Yeah.
no happy endings.
No.
Gosh forbid you have a happy ending. They,
Right.
if there is something where, yeah, that's really wonderful and everybody smiles, something comes along in the last 2 minutes that's going to bring everybody down, like maybe one of the main characters' daughters dies. And that's how they leave it. So it's something's not right. But I don't think television is ever going to go back to the way it was. I like to have a happy balance of the arc storytelling as well as telling a story within a half hour and moving on, as well as maybe a little brighter lighting, and a lot more charm. No one seems happy on TV shows today. All the characters are sardonic, sarcastic. They all look alike. Nobody smiles. Everybody rolls their eyes. I don't know what's going on, but it's not. And then the commercials.
You just described the supermarket too. It's kind of like what the supermarket's like right now. Everybody's sort of like, and get out
Yeah,
of my way.
yeah, that's right.
And the commercials, yes. I've had a couple of folks on here. We've had some brilliant conversations about jingles, about the theme songs, about when you
Mm,
would hear the theme to a particular show without the show even starting, other than the theme itself and the graphics for the theme, the open. You had a feeling, you had a connection to that show. You'd be humming that theme, the open and the close, the full theme with the credits up and out, fade to black. And it just gave you a certain beginning, middle, end feel that was really, really good. And now I see, on some of the nostalgic networks, there are opportunities with your remote where it says skip intro. And I'm like,
mm.
absolutely not. I want to hear the open. I want to see the open and
And I
then
want to
there's
see the
and then
credit.
there's Maud.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
And the credits are disappearing.
and the credits are being squeezed and chopped or so fast, you can't even read them. And somebody's kid was the grip on that show and they want to see the name. Slow it
Exactly.
down.
Exactly.
And so the themes and the jingles too, the commercials uh, had a lot of singing jingles that were feel good and just gave you a certain warmth about the product. And a lot of that we've had some jingle singers and session musicians on the
Oh,
show who've been
cool.
in that world. And they said, yeah, that was then. And as I said, is there any way to bring some of that back? And they said, well, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. When I flip through the channels and I do try to watch the new shows
Sure.
and I really, because there are, like I said, there's so much talent behind and in front of the cameras. Okay.
Right.
But as I'm flipping, even if I do get into a show, the commercials will be like a bazillion. And then I'm like, wait a minute, what was I watching? I mean, I don't even know
Yeah.
what I was watching because of the commercials. So, but you got those DVDs, you got those Blu-rays today, you got Me TV and Cozy TV and on Antenna TV and on and
Antenna
on and on. So
TV.
they're there. And I have to say, I never thought really, I wasn't sure if today's younger generation appreciates the older shows. But one day I was in Barnes and Noble, and this 12-year-old girl walked up to her mom. I was right next to them, and she had a DVD of Bewitched. And she goes,
Mm.
look, Ma, it's Bewitched. I'm like, she's 12 years old. She knows Bewitched. So that means that these shows, if it's good, no matter what era. And Dick Van Dyke Show, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, on and on, were good shows that still hold up today.
You have a favorite? Or is it tough to have a favorite? Do you have like a top 5, top 10 list?
Well, Bewitched has it's his own entity. So there's Bewitched, Kung Fu, Wonder Woman, The $6 Million Man, The Bionic Woman, Twilight Zone, Star Trek, Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler
Mm.
Moore. That's probably my top show.
That's a good list of shows, my friend. That's some of that. The Twilight Zones, I know they've been doing remakes and they've had several remakes of the Twilight Zone. But just for me, the original Rod Serling, just the way he thought and the lighting, the shadowing and the black and white and the music, the time period that it was perfection.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why I think those new Twilight Zones didn't make it is because they didn't really understand why the original one did. Rod Serling, many times, and all the writers would have source material, either novels or novellas, that they would write these scripts from, and that would be adapted into half-hour episodes. Many of the newer shows, they just tried to write great half-hour scripts with twist after twist to be clever, and it didn't work because they didn't have the source material, or they didn't respect the source material. By the way, I also love Ozzie and Harriet, which I've
Oh
rediscovered
yeah.
in
Yeah.
recent years. Just tremendous. Talk about likable.
Yes. We had Jerry Mathers on too, of course, the
Um,
Beeve, and what a nice guy,
and
what a warm and soft-spoken and just pleasant. And that episode was so well received. And Marion Ross came through, and Stanley and Barry Livingston came through, Kathy Garver,
great.
all fabulous people, and they're so bowled over, which is kind of nice to see that people still today appreciate their work, appreciate the characters they played on these series because of the impact they made in people's lives. Some people can even mouth the words to the episodes to the celebrity, right? What you taught about, Willis? Or damn, damn, damn. There goes the punch bowl on Good Times, right? It's it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. And it's all about love. You see, it's all about love because a lot of people who grew up originally in the 60s and 70s and early 80s with these classic TV shows, or really in any decade, and just like the new kids that are growing up with them today, they form these associations with these shows because these shows are so accessible. They're, again, I don't mean to overuse this word,
No.
but they're so likable that you just like these people and they
Yes.
become part of your family. It's like when I met Elizabeth Montgomery, I already knew her because I adored her work so much beyond, including, but beyond Bewitched. So it was
Yeah.
like I knew her already.
Yeah. Agnes Moorehead and Dick Sargent too, who had
Yeah,
to step in,
yeah,
which wasn't necessarily easy, but I thought he
no,
did a great job. And when you look back and you see some of the folks who had, like guest appearances on these series, and then they went on to fame and fortune themselves, but they
mhm,
started out on all of these shows and series. It was extraordinary. Or you would see them in the commercials too. You would see like Nancy Walker doing the Bounty Towels, Quicker Picker Upper, and all
yeah,
that kind of thing.
yeah.
Or I forget the name of the actress who did the famous actress. She did the Imperial Margarine. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature.
Yeah,
Remember?
yeah. She
And
played B. Arthur's sister on The Golden Girls.
and how perfect is it for her to
Yeah,
be be
yeah,
Arthur's sister?
yeah,
So it's the feeling, it's the way they're written. The scripts are extraordinary. We had Lucy Arnaz on, and I asked her about I Love Lucy and other things as well. And she said it was the script writers, it was the actors and actresses. It was they didn't get political, they didn't get into craziness. They talked about everyday stuff in life that we all have to deal with our
yeah.
personalities
Yeah.
that still people can touch base with today, right?
Absolutely correct. It's just there's a universality
Yes.
about classic TV shows, and there's a warmth and a welcoming. You want to what you enjoy watching these shows and you want to be a part of the family of these shows. I wanted to live, I still do, in the Petrie's living room. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that
Mhm.
living room.
Isn't that fantastic?
It's just,
Suburban New Rochelle.
it's perfect. And
Yeah.
there's certain like pictures on the back wall, those vertical ones. I actually had a couple of those back in Erie Street and back in Rochester. Similar ones to that. So
Yeah.
and then I used to go visit my Aunt Faye and Uncle Jerry, and they had a similar living room to that. So it was
Well,
real.
it's of the time.
My
Yeah.
uncle Ange and Aunt Alice bought like the exact sofa that
Yeah.
Robin Law
Yeah.
had. You know, that
We
sectional.
growing up out east on Long Island in New York, we had a sectional in the living room as well. And the Dick Van Dyke Show, you'll probably appreciate this. I would always look for the episodes that had the triangle pillow on the love seat that was on the other side of the dining room table. Oh,
Yeah.
there's that triangle pillow. Oh, wait, on this episode, it's not there.
Yeah,
The
it's
thing
funny.
we had. The incomparable Lloyd Schwartz on as well, of course, prolific producer, son of
Love Lloyd.
Sherwood Schwartz. And we were talking about, the Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island and all of these other fantastic shows too. But I brought up a conversation about the underscoring, the music underneath to create the connective tissue and to create the mood and the feeling of what the dialogue was, whether it was something sad and moving, something frightening, something cheery. And boy, when you listen to the underscoring, the music that's underneath the scenes or the music that transitions from scene to scene, I would absolutely look for that and love that. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would look for things like that, on several different levels for more things that I could connect with, So it was just, and I was definitely also the kid that we had to watch, what I wanted to watch. That's just the way it was going to go. And as far as this thing about how, now if you don't do this, you won't be able to watch TV. No, I was spoiled rotten. It would be 10 o'clock and my parents would be yelling from upstairs, Herbie J, come to bed. No, I want to watch Charlie's Angels. It's a new angel this year. I,
Right.
I was just, you couldn't stop me. You couldn't control me. I just loved television and it brought me so much joy.
Yeah.
And everything really that I've done was based on that love that I had for classic TV. Clearly.
And of course, prolific producers, so many of them. But we'd be, and we'll talk about the books too. But we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up names like Aaron Spelling and names like Norman Lear. Tell us about the impact names like that have made in this industry.
Well, Aaron Spelling knew how to make a TV show. He knew what the audience wanted, and everybody thinks that his favorite of his shows was Family because it was, with Sada Thompson and Chrissy McNichol.
What a great show!
Because it
Yeah.
was so reverent or whatnot. But that wasn't his favorite of his shows. His favorite was the Mod Squad. He
Was
loved
it really?
the
Wow.
Mod Squad. And
Wow.
then, of
Yeah.
course, he just became the super guy of the 70s. What was it? Fantasy Island, Love Boat, Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels. I mean, SWAT, on and on. And he could do no wrong. These weren't sometimes the most wonderful scripts, but the lighting was so bright. The stars were so beautiful. Now, Norman Lear, that's a whole different thing. Norman Lear changed television completely in the early 1970s with All in the Family and Maude and Good Times and One Day at a Time, the first really weekly regular lead character who was a divorcee, a female divorcee, even though Vivian Vance on the Lucy Show was divorced. And
That's
she was one of
right.
the first divorced women of television. But Norman Lear, man, he just came along and the world changed. CBS, that was the years that CBS got rid of the Petticoat Junction, Beverly Hillbillies, Mayberry RFD, what was it called? The Great Country Purge, because of this new reality programming or new real type programming. But I always thought, why can't there be both? Why does it have to be the end of one era? Why do all the country shows have to go and we only have to bring in videotaped, serious, toned comedies like All in the Family? But that's what happened.
You know,
Cycle.
Yeah, that's what it is. You mentioned family, and just rewatching those fantastic episodes, beautifully cast, like you mentioned, Sada Thompson, James Broderick, Kristen McNichol, Gary Frank, Meredith Baxter Burney, and Quinn Cummings later on, and then some of the guest stars. When I was on a TV shoot in Los Angeles, Burbank, I said, there's two places that I need to take this rental car while I was out there and find. One was the Brady Bunch house because HGTV was doing the restoration, and I knew some people at HGTV that were involved in that. So I said, I've got to go and see how they're taking that house that didn't necessarily look, on the inside at all like the Paramount Studios version. Went, saw it. It was fantastic. They were painting the numbers on the street by hand. It was really cool. And then I said, you know what? I got to find the house that was used in Family. I got to make my way to Pasadena and find that house, which is a real house as well,
Mhm.
and found the house. And it was fantastic. There it is. They got rid of all the trees and shrubs. There's one big tree in the front, but all those shrubs and fencing that they had in the front that I think probably they liked having because it created some privacy for when they were shooting on the grounds. But just to see, that's another thing, these iconic houses that were used for these shows, people fell in love with. And then
Yeah,
there's that ranch where the Bewitched house was also the Bellows house and I Dream of Jeannie and so many other.
right.
There's that whole,
The Partridge Family was up the street,
is
and
that the
even
Paramount or Columbia Ranch?
Columbia Ranch.
Columbia
Columbia
Ranch.
Ranch. But
We're all
there was a real Bewitched house, and that's in Santa Monica. And I didn't realize that or learn about that until like a couple years ago. So it's like near the corner of, I don't want to say because I want everybody to go there, but
right. That's what happens, right?
it's
People
in
start
Santa
knocking
Monica.
on the door saying, "Can I come in? I want to see if you really use that fabric softener that they used on that show." Yeah, it's like, call security, please. Let the dog out.
Yeah.
But some people, I guess, are very nice about it too. The
Yeah.
All in the Family house too, I believe, is a house in Queens, New York. That
Mhm.
was, and I saw a picture of it somewhere. It's just really
Well,
amazing.
and that Brady Bunch reality show where they turned, the that was probably one of the greatest ideas in the history of, if not all of television, certainly reality television. I think we all thought about how, if we could one day do that, and they did it. They transformed that
Yes.
house into, a real house. I don't know what they're
Yes.
going to do with it now. That's the issue. What do they do with it now?
HGTV still owns it, right? And I believe there was a lot of people that wanted it. I had heard, I think maybe Rosie O'Donnell might have, Lance Bass
Oh
from,
yeah.
he wanted it, and people were competing, but then HGTV came in and said, well, top those bids and
Yeah, yeah.
we'll take care of it from there. So when did you start to, well, actually, even before that, you were an NBC page, right?
Mhm.
Tell us about that. That must have really spurred this interest in television, seeing it being made, being in the thick of it.
Actually, it really did play a very important role in my career in general. I went to a taping of Family Ties in the fall of 1983 when I made the formal move to LA. And I saw these pages running around the studio, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. So I stopped a page and I says, hey, I want to do what you want to do. And he's like, no, you don't. It doesn't pay anything. But I'm like, yes, I do. So after 6 months of calling, and he gave me the person to call, I got the job. And they said, well, why don't you try to be a CBS page or an ABC page? But it was the NBC page that was the most prestigious internship that I had heard about in the industry. So I definitely wanted that one. You were contracted for 18 months. And anybody who was anybody in the 80s, I met through either the Johnny Carson show or Super Password or even the new Let's Make a Deal. That was terrific working with Monty Hall. And, after loving him so much in the 60s and 70s, now I'm working the new Let's Make a Deal. So yeah, you were contracted for 18 months. You either move up or you move out. I moved out in the 18th month, or at least a little bit before. I started working in the publicity department through the Page program for I Dream of Jeannie 15 years later. And that was the reunion movie that he had Wayne Rogers playing Tony
That's
Malkin.
right. Yes.
So it became like the biggest TV movie in the universe.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was upset because I'm like, wait a minute. If there's any blonde supernatural woman who's in love with a dark-haired mortal guy, if they do a reunion for any show like that, it should be Bewitched. So I wrote a reunion for Bewitched, got it to Elizabeth Montgomery. She didn't want to do it. Got it to Bill Asher, who was doing like a new Bewitched series that Samantha Elizabeth was actually going to come on and pop on and introduce this new witch and then take off. And then the financing fell through. Bill was going to hire me for that as a writer. And when the financing fell through for that new Bewitched, which was to be called Bewitched again, I said, how about we do a book about the original show? Do you think Elizabeth would be interested in working with me on that? And that's what happened. So I actually broke my toe in January '86 after my internship ended at NBC. So I couldn't do anything. My little baby toe, I couldn't do anything. And I ended up watching TV again with adult eyes and reruns of Bewitched. And that's what led to me writing the reunion script, in addition to being motivated by the Ajima Genie reunion script. And that's how it all came to me meeting Elizabeth. Because Bill Asher talked to Elizabeth for me.
Yeah.
When I met her, she said, you know, Bill Asher told me that I should talk with you, and he never tells me that I should talk with anybody.
Right.
So that's how it happened. And then everything good from my career, whether any of the books or the documentaries or my own TV show or the live events that I did at the Burbank Barnes & Noble in 2015, all of that came from the Bewitched book and Elizabeth Montgomery and Bill Asher. They ignited my career, and I owe my career to them. And that's why I was so excited to do this documentary on the Reels channel this Sunday, April 16th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time and 6 p.m. Pacific Coast Time. And it's such a dignified documentary produced by AMS Pictures, and the people at Reels channel, Steve Cheskin, are just terrific. And I just can't say enough about it. And I'm so proud of that documentary, that I served as only one of the executive producers and only one of the writers. It's not like my show. It was a team effort, and it could not have been done without AMS Pictures and the Reels channel and all of the wonderful Sarah Gashaw, who is the co-writer, and Joel Eisenberg, one of the co-producers, and Andy Streetfield, one of the producer or the executive producer at AMS. Just a wonderful, wonderful team of people.
Look for that on the Reels channel, folks. If you don't have Reels, get it. It's a fantastic channel. You've had this wonderful, the friendship, of course, with Elizabeth, and you've covered her in many different iterations through your books. We have two of them here. Tell us about these. Of course, starting Twitch Upon a Star came first, right?
Well, actually, the Bewitched book came first in 1992. That was about the show. And that was really how I connected with Elizabeth. And then
Is that Bewitched Forever?
Yeah, it became Bewitched Forever in 1995. When I rewrote it because Elizabeth had passed away and it was time for an update.
Yeah.
And then I rewrote it again in 2004 because they did the Bewitched movie with Nora Ephron that I served as a consultant on. Right. So Twitch Upon a Star happened really 10 years later or so.
Yeah.
With Taylor Trade Publishing. I knew that I would one day want to write a complete biography, a narrative biography on Elizabeth's life before, during, and after Bewitched. I mean, movies and whatnot. And the Essential Elizabeth Montgomery really originally was supposed to be an appendix to Twitch Upon a Star. But when I handed in 900 pages to my publisher, they said, great, we can't do a 900-page book. Let's make two books. So Twitch Upon a Star is a narrative biography. The Essential Elizabeth Montgomery is like an encyclopedic chronicle of Elizabeth's extensive career before, during, and after Bewitched.
The family of Elizabeth and fans, what has been the response to those books from them? I'm sure they feel so connected to it and appreciate your taking the time to really spotlight her life in the beautiful way that you do.
Well, and that's the thing. Elizabeth was a very down to earth, beautiful person
She really
who
was.
was unaffected by her Hollywood upbringing and her career. And she raised her children in that very same way. I mean, Billy Asher is like the sweetest guy in the world. Rebecca Asher took after her father. She's a director and she's wonderful. And Robert Asher's, he kind of keeps out of the spotlight, but they're all three of the sweetest people. And when I first met Billy Asher, it was really because of Elizabeth, because I was on the phone with her and I had to, one of the first times I was on the phone with her, and I had to have my guitar fixed. And she's like, well, why don't you take it to my son? And I'm like, your son? And as fate would have it, her son had a guitar shop 1 block away from my house in Santa Monica. And I met him at that moment. And he's also, by the way, he was interviewed for the Reels documentary on Sunday. So it was just, I just can't say enough about who she was as a person, who she was as a mother to those kids, and how wonderful those kids are. And now that isn't to say that she wasn't a complicated person, because she was, but we're all complicated people. But we
Yeah.
handle those complications with dignity in the documentary.
Absolutely. Yeah. A beautiful soul on so many levels and gone way, way too soon. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Also, when you think about it, I had heard a story, didn't when Bewitched was coming to an end, didn't wasn't there still some contractual time left? And as a result, they had to come up with something. So they came up with the Paul Lynde show.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
What happened was Bewitched was actually renewed for like 2 more years, but Elizabeth was done. And if you look at those, that last season, she's really kind of just dragging her feet through the show. She sounds like she didn't love the show. She always loved that show to the day she passed away, but she wanted to move on. The show wasn't the same anymore. There were some marriage issues with she and Bill Asher. The marriage wasn't the same anymore, and it was just time to move on. So even though she was contracted for 2 more years, she ended the show. ABC did not cancel the series. In the last season, it was up against All in the Family, and it held its own in as second place opposite All in the Family. And ABC wanted to give her the kitchen sink, and she's like, "No, I want to move on." So she ended up. Not only did Bill Asher end up doing Temperatures Rising and the New Temperatures Rising
that's
show
right.
and the Paul Lynde show with Harry Ackerman, by the way, executive producer Harry Ackerman of Bewitched. But Elizabeth then did The Victim TV movie
That's
and
right.
Mrs. Sundance. Those are two movies that she did with ABC for their Movie of the Week series as kind of like a contractual, as you said, contractual closing to that agreement. And then when she did, A Case of Rape on NBC, that was it. That's when she became the queen, the first
Oh,
queen
yeah.
of TV movies, before Lindsay Wagner, before Valerie Bertinelli, before Jacqueline Smith. There was Elizabeth Montgomery.
Didn't she do also Lizzie Borden?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And
Which
that,
surprised people when they're used to seeing her as Samantha. Yeah.
well, it surprised her father more
Yeah.
than anyone, because he was like, when he found out that she did that movie, he was like, "Oh, you would." And she was like, "What do you mean?" Well, Lizzie Borden gave her father 40 whacks and
Mm,
her stepmother 40 whacks. So there was always this kind of issue that Elizabeth had with her dad when he divorced her mother. She was very upset about that. She was very family oriented. So when Robert Montgomery married another Elizabeth, if you could believe it, the first Elizabeth was Elizabeth Allen, who was a former Broadway actress. He divorced her and married Elizabeth Harkness, Buffy Harkness, or Harkness, who was very prestigious in New York, heir of big, big, big money. So she was not happy when that marriage took place. So Robert Montgomery's like, "Oh, so you're saying that you want to like give us 40 whacks?" So it was pretty interesting. And when I met her, she had the axe, Jim,
mm,
with the dried fake blood on
mm.
it. And I was like, "Could you please put that down?"
Could you please sort of?
She
Now,
said,
she
"Well,
was from upstate New York too, like you as well, right?
They spent their summers in Paterson, New York.
Patterson, yeah.
She was born in New York City in Manhattan, moved to Beverly Hills, and then spent their summers in upstate. She loved animals. This is where the Twitch nose thing came from,
Yes.
which we talk about in the documentary. She loved, the little bunny rabbits and whatnot. And that's where really the Twitch was born and things like that. And you could see that on Bewitched there was a lot of animal geared episodes. She loved animals. She loved horseback riding with her father, and on the English countryside as well as in Pattonwood, New York. And she loved games. She loved the track. That's why she would do Password in Hollywood Squares.
Oh, yeah.
She loved games.
Yeah. I love watching the older reruns of Password and all the game shows on GSN Game Show Network and all the other networks, because you can see Lucy and Elizabeth and Carol Burnett and Audrey Meadows and all of them as the guest stars on with the contestants. And I just can only imagine how the contestants must have been in awe. Wait a minute, I'm playing Password with Audrey Meadows right now. Pat Carroll? Pat Carroll's across from me. It's like, humana.
In game shows like that, they made the celebrities got to be. It was really the first time that we got to see celebrities be
together.
Real.
Right.
Like us. That. Right. That was accessible for us.
Yes.
And to see Elizabeth Montgomery, give these passwords to, these players, the contestants, and have her joke with Carol. They were just friends. It was like so cool. And that was all we had when there were Bewitched fans. After Bewitched ended, that's all we had for Elizabeth, really.
Yeah.
Before the TV movies was when she would do Password.
It's nice too is some of the celebrities and even some of the child stars who really appreciate the fan base, appreciate those who grew up with and invested their time in those series, those characters. Because sometimes, you have some people, when they're done, that's it, they're gone. Yeah. But you have like the Kathy Garvers or the Glenn Scarpellis, who've all stopped through here, and others, Stanley Livingston's, who really get the understanding of how people still find the work that they did beloved, and they're still connected to it, and they do everything they can to keep that, in Jerry Mathers too, to keep that feeling alive for the continued fans. That's so nice, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and Jerry Mathers, by the way, has a brother, Jimmy Mathers, who made a guest appearance on Bewitched in the first black and white season. But absolutely, again, it comes down to family. And Elizabeth Montgomery and Mary Tyler Moore, finally, in their later years, they came to peace with it because, Mary Ned did really not want to be known so much for Dick Van Dyke and being Laura Petrie. She was really kind of done with Mary Richards from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And she and Elizabeth tried to do these very different characters after Bewitched and after
Mary did the movie Ordinary People, which was a real departure from what people were used to.
Right. But they both also played murderers too, these crazy murderers. But towards the end, when they figured, it's like, you know what? Samantha and Bewitched isn't going anywhere. Laura Petrie and Mary Richards aren't going anywhere. We just better just realize that we are still loved for this. And when I met Elizabeth, which was 1989, she wasn't doing interviews. She would not do interviews, certainly about Bewitched. That was over. But I convinced her to realize that people still loved her in the 80s and the 90s just as much as they did in the 60s. And as a result, she ended up doing more. She did John Tesh one-on-one.
That's right. I saw that. There's clips of that on YouTube. Yeah.
That would have never happened, No. And then also, too, she connected with David White and Dick Sargent because I brought them together, which I just hold so dear as a very special part of meeting her. They wouldn't talk to me unless she did. So she called them up.
Yeah.
I got a call one day from Dick Sargent. He goes, I just, I'm looking for Herbie Pilato. He didn't say okay. And he's like, I just got the strangest call from Elizabeth Montgomery, says that you're doing some book on Bewitched and I need to talk with you. I haven't heard from her in 15 years. And then as I'm talking to him, call waiting. Boop, boop, boop. Hi, Herbie. It's this Lizzie. Did Dick call you? I'm like, yeah. So I'm on the phone with Samantha and Darren. It was crazy, and so much of the show was Darren calling home to
Oh,
examine,
yes,
is everything okay? And here I am,
exactly.
in like a
Right.
surreal episode.
What trouble did your mother get us involved in now?
Exactly, exactly.
I mentioned it a couple of times in this show. I had a wonderful opportunity to meet Carol Burnett and Florence Henderson as well.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
Florence was fantastic. I was at a gala event, which was actually in Connecticut, and it was a charity fundraiser, and I'm a part of it every year with this family. The family's one of their relatives is Sonny Grasso from, of course, he was the New York City police detective where the French Connection was sort of patterned after his life. So
Mm.
he's a relative of theirs. And normally this event is emceed by Kathy Lee Gifford and Frank, but they weren't available this one particular year. I think Frank was under the weather. So they brought in another mutual friend, the family, Florence
Mhm.
Henderson. So I'm brought into this particular room, which was a VIP room. And they said, Jim, there's somebody in there that you might want to meet. And I said, well, who? Because I expected Kathy Lee and Frank to be there. It was sort of a last minute change. And they bring me into the VIP room, and the room is sort of dimly lit, but there's this person in the corner with a mob of people around her.
Mhm.
And all you saw was her and a glow of her because she was in a white pantsuit. And I said to the folks who brought me in, I said, is that Florence Henderson right there? And they're like, yeah, she's emceeing for Kathy Lee and Frank, who aren't available
Wow.
tonight. Said, holy cow, I had no idea. And one of the strangest things that ever happened was I don't know how this happened because it's one of those intuitive situations. She's got all these people around her. It's sort of dark. You only saw these shadowy images of all these people that were waiting to see her. And then you saw this like angelic sort of view of her with the spotlight on her and the white pantsuit and the beautifully, meticulously kept hair and all of it. And she sees me I say it was the velvet jacket I had on, but she sees me being brought into the VIP room, and she parts the seas like Moses and makes a beeline for me. And then
Wow.
she says to the photographer, I want a picture with him. And I had
Oh,
this like crushed black
yeah, yeah.
velvety texture jacket on. I say it's the jacket, but she says, no, no, no. I want to, I want to know who you are. And I'm like, what? That's my line. There's the professional photographers there, and he takes the pictures, and then we're talking and chatting, and and all these other people who've been waiting to see her turn around, and they're like, what is going on here? She literally parted the seas, came to me. The whole night we had conversations and all kinds of cool stuff. But every time an elevator opened up, whatever, she was there and I was there. It was so uncanny. So
Wow.
we're in this one position here where there was an area where there was a silent auction, and I'm chatting with her and Sonny Grasso and some others. And the professional photographer comes around again and says, okay, everybody squeeze together. We want to take a group shot. So Florence was standing, I was seated next to Sonny Grasso because I knew Sonny, and she's standing right here. We're chatting. She plops down right on my right leg in her white pantsuit, and I'm now holding up Carol Brady on my right leg.
Oh,
I'm holding her up, and I'm now 11 years old all over again.
sure.
I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I was just dumbfounded. I loved it, of course, and I didn't drop her. I held her on, but they took some great shots of us and everything else. And she had a little bit of a little saucy side, of
Oh,
course.
absolutely.
And she gets up and she turns around in that beautiful white pantsuit with her meticulous hair and that beautiful face and the whole bit. And she said, "Oh, Florence, I don't think I'll ever wash these pants again." And she turns around and she goes, "I bet you won't, Jim." The rest of the night, she's coming. She's getting ready to leave. She's with her daughters, and the daughters are with her. And I'm over talking to some people near sort of the exit to the Palace Theater. And all of a sudden, she makes a beeline for me again towards the exit, comes up to me and said, I just want to let you know it was such a pleasure meeting you, Jim. I really enjoyed this time with you. I wish you and your family a beautiful Thanksgiving. I hope that we meet again. And I said, that's my line. And I want to thank you for all of the years of love and entertainment and humor and everything that you brought to the table for millions of us. And not just the Brady Bunch, but everything that you've done at the Today Show. I mean, everything. And she leaned over, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and said, I thank you for those words. And then she mentioned that she personally wrote back to every fan that wrote to her. How rare is that? And then when she left with her daughters on each arm, the doors opened. She went out. It was like a movie. She went out into the fog and disappeared. And then a couple of weeks later, she's at Dancing with the Stars, rooting on Maureen McCormick, who was competing, Marsha Brady, of course. And a couple of weeks after that, Thanksgiving morning, my cell phone is on fire. It's smoking. It's burning up. And I'm getting all these condolences on social media and all this. And I'm like, my God, did somebody in the family pass away? And I'm just waking up. I'm not sure. Check all of these messages, see all this social media stuff sending me condolences. And it was people saying they're sorry for me because they know that that was a very important moment to have met her. And I always wanted to meet her. Not as a drooling fan, but as somebody who really appreciates the person and her work and her craft.
Right.
And she had died on that Thanksgiving, just a month or so after, I saw her. And a couple of people said, you know what, that was meant to be. She parted the seas and went right to you, and you were supposed to meet her before that was supposed to happen. And I believe in that. How about you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I just want to say too that Florence knew Elizabeth, went to school together with her in the New York Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I interviewed Florence for Twitch Upon a Star. And then I wrote a tribute to her after she passed away for the Television Academy. That's on Emmys.com. But that's kind of how I felt about meeting Elizabeth. When I finally convinced her, to that I really was this person who, actually Bill Asher is the one who said, you need to talk with Herbie. He's really concerned with this entity known as Bewitched. Those are his words. And when I told her that I believed Bewitched was about prejudice and strong work ethic and true love, and that Samantha and Darren loved each other despite their differences, that's when she really, really opened up and talked with me and felt comforted about being in Bewitched, or that it was okay to still be loved, as I said before, all these years after the show went off the air. And she told me, she goes, you know something? She says, well, after I said to her, I go, you know who I am, don't you? You know who I am, don't you? She goes, what do you mean? Now she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm your guardian angel. And she stopped and she said, the last person who said that was my grandma Becca. So if that's true, you have some pretty big angel shoes to fill. But that's how I've always felt about her, and
What a beautiful thing to say and to hear, huh?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. And years later, a friend of mine, her mother was a critic, a TV critic, and she was interviewing Elizabeth for one of her later movies, Face to Face or whatnot. So after the interview was over, the critic put her pad and her pen down, and she turned to Elizabeth and she says, I just have to tell you, my daughter is very dear friends with one of your biggest fans. And Elizabeth said, Herbie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no other explanation.
Yes.
Of what, this woman.
It sounds like the relationship with Elizabeth, which is a very beautiful and fortunate thing that you've had, similar to another friend who I'm sure you know as well, Michael Stern with Lucille Ball.
Absolutely.
It just they
Well,
took
Michael
you
had,
under their wing and they realized that you were the real deal
yes,
and not out for anything. You just really appreciated and were moved by them as people on and off screen,
yes.
and they realized it cut through everything else. And that's probably what happened with Florence, with me. It's with you, with Elizabeth, with Michael, with
Well,
Lucille Ball.
With Michael, it was a very extensive, a
Yes,
friendship.
they played what, chess or checkers together,
Yeah,
backgammon, or
yeah. But with me and Elizabeth, it was like four special, meetings. 2-hour
yeah,
meetings over like 3 months in
yeah.
1989, and we talked on the phone. But then, she passed. You
That's
know,
right,
there
right.
was no meetings after that. But what she was and what she became and how she warmed up to Bewitched in the later years and started talking about it. That was all, I like to think anyway. That was all because I came into her life and reminded her of the love that so many still felt. So it was a very, I mean, I gave her a crystal unicorn, which I had no money at all to buy, and put four new tires on my car, which I had no money to buy those tires, but I wanted the car to look nice when I drove up to her house.
Yeah, of course.
But I gave her that when I gave her that crystal unicorn, she said, "Oh, don't you?" And
Mhm,
what she meant was both Samantha and Elizabeth loved unicorns.
mhm,
So the fact that I hit her heart there
mm,
was a wonderful thing. And when I left the house that
yeah,
first day,
yeah,
and I saw that mist that you were talking about
yes,
standing in the doorway at her house, and she's waving. I'm like, oh my God,
yeah,
Montgomery is waving goodbye to me at
yeah,
her.
at
And
her,
then
yeah.
before I drive away, she says, "Would you like a zucchini?" And I'm like, "What?" And before I really had it, she leaped into her garden in the middle of her driveway and she picked me a zucchini. And she gives me this zucchini. And she's like, "Here, would you like another one?" I said, "What?" And before I could respond, she jumped back again into the garden, this
Yeah,
magical garden of Elizabeth,
incredible.
and picks a second zucchini. And it was, Jim,
And
it
I
was,
don't doubt if you never liked zucchini until that moment, from that
that's
day
true.
forward, you loved zucchini.
I have a picture of those zucchini somewhere. I have them.
People may remember the house that was next door to the Bewitched house, and the Bellows house was used for Hazel and also used for Gidget and other
Yeah,
shows. And you wrote about Glamour, Gidgets, and the Girl Next Door. Tell us about this. This is a great
yeah,
book too.
yeah. Thank you. Yes, I knew that I wanted to cover all the female actors, actresses of the 60s and 70s, and it was just time for that book. It seemed to be a natural development from when I did Elizabeth and the Essential Elizabeth Montgomery. And then, of course, I did the guy version, Dashing, Daring, and Debonair, TV's, television's top iconic male actors of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There we go. So, and Adam West wrote the foreword to that. So it was just time for these books. And these are celebrations. My books are celebrations of the actors. They're not just trivia books. They're not salacious books. I do address compelling and controversial topics about these stars, but I hope, again, I have addressed them with dignity. But the Bionic book, Bewitched, the Kung Fu Book of Cain, the Kung Fu Book of Wisdom, Life Story, the Book of Life Goes On, all have that running theme of prejudice. Each of those shows, $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, they were half man, half machine. They felt like they were outsiders. Cain was an Asian in a Western world. Samantha was a witch in a mortal world. Corky on Life Goes On, and Chad Lowe, as who played Jesse McKenna, who had AIDS. They were ostracized for their physical or their disabilities.
And Patty
So
LuPone was in that, right?
absolutely.
Yes, yes. That was on ABC. Yes,
ABC Sunday nights, 89
yes.
and 93. And it came second to 60 Minutes, just like Bewitched came second to All in the Family. but ABC let it go, and they went on with
Because
the.
there was a revolutionary show, because that was one of the first times they really dealt with that subject matter, right, on
On
television.
it was the first time a character had a disability as a weekly performance. Jerry Jewell was really the
Oh yeah,
first to
yeah,
have a disability in real life. He
yeah.
played a character with a disability on Facts of Life, and that was a
Right,
semi-regular role, or that was a
right.
guest episodes. Corky, played by the amazing Chris Burke, who, by the way, remembered everything about the show when I interviewed him,
Yes,
had Down syndrome in real life, has Down syndrome in real life, and he played Corky. But they treated him as they should,
yes,
as a regular person, as a
yes.
person who happened to have a disability, that happened to be Down syndrome. Just like Elizabeth played a witch, a woman who happened to be a witch, who happened to have magical powers. Those magical powers didn't define her. She was
Correct.
defined by her humanity, just like
Right.
Corky was defined by his humanity. Kane was defined not the fact that he was half Asian and half American, but by his humanity. Steve and Jamie defined by their humanity, not their superpowers.
Right. The forward by David Carradine for
Yeah.
this one here. Tell us about this one.
Kung Fu Book of Cain was definitely the natural development for me, because from doing Bewitched, again, because it had that theme. And when I approached David Carradine, he was one tough cookie, one tough cookie. But he wrote that forward. He believed in me just like Elizabeth believed in me, because they knew that I cared about these projects that were so,
Yeah,
close to their heart, and they were so protective of them. And
yeah.
years later, I did the Bravo show, was one of the producers on the Bravo show, The 100 Greatest TV Characters.
Yes.
David Carradine was one of those characters. And I had talked with him and met him on the phone, but I never met him in person. But when I was in LA, I said, look, we have to get David Carradine on this show. Let me go pick him up. I don't care, to do anything. I'll take my little car there and
Yeah,
pick him
I'll
up.
be there.
I did. I
I bet
came.
you washed and waxed the car that day too.
I did. And I knocked on the door, and David, he had like one of those, okay, who is this? I go, hi, David, it's Herbie. He goes, what the hell are you doing here? And he got in the car with me. And as we're driving down Ventura Boulevard in my little Malibu, was it 2005 Malibu, he whips out his flute, okay? Kane's flute from Kung Fu. And he's playing the flute in my passenger side in my little Malibu as we're driving down Ventura Boulevard to the studio. And he was freaking me out, and he knew he was freaking me out, and he loved it. So that is just another amazing moment.
What a great story. And that, of course, then the Kung Fu Book of Wisdom.
Yes. And that happened just like the Essential Elizabeth Montgomery happened, because I wrote too many pages for the Kung Fu Book of
Yeah.
Cain. My publisher said, again, Herbie, I says, okay, so let's divide it. Let's put the Kung Fu Book of Wisdom, which was going to be an appendix on the Kung Fu Book of Cain, and let's just make it a separate book. And that's how that happened. So
That's incredible. In that, the Gidgets, the Glamour Gidgets, and the Girl Next Door. Tell us about some of the iconic figures that you cover. You can see
yes,
several of them on the screen there.
yes. Eleanor Donahue was right on the front page, right below Dawn Wells. She played, of course, on Father Knows Best. She also made guest appearances later on The Odd Couple and various other shows.
Wasn't she?
But
Was she married to Harry Ackerman? Or
she was married
yeah,
to Harry Ackerman, executive producer of Bewitched,
right.
and their son Peter Ackerman went on to be a producer, and today is a minister. God bless him.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
so yeah, and he's become a dear friend. Dawn Wells, loved her, totally loved her. I helped her with her first book. We were supposed to do a biography together, which still might happen actually one day. But then she passed away way too young, but what a sweetheart.
Yes,
More, of course. Let's see, Farrah Fawcett, Farrah Fawcett. They're
sure.
an amazing human being. Nichelle Nichols, I interviewed for this particular book. She was terrific. Donna Douglas from the Beverly Hillbillies. What a sweetheart. Julie Newmar,
Ah, yeah.
Catwoman, Barbara Bain from Mission Impossible. Just a terrific.
Sally Field.
Sally Field. I mean,
Flying
I didn't
Nun,
interview
and
Sally, but I did interview and become friends with, God bless her, the Karen Richmond from the New Gidget. So she really is an amazing person who did my pitch reel for my show. Then again, with Herbie
ah,
J Pilato, and she
yeah.
does a lot of live events with me. She's just a sweetheart, a wonderful person.
You mentioned also the Dashing book
Yeah,
and Dashing, Daring, and Debonair. Tell us about, of course, we see Tony Dow, who we just lost, Dick Van Dyke, John
yeah,
Travolta,
yeah.
Nat King Cole, and Henry Winkler as the Fonz, and so many others.
So many others. Yeah, Tony Dell was just a sweetheart. He was probably him and Jerry Bathers, two of the nicest
Yes.
guys ever. And I got to say too, Barry Livingston and Stan Livingston, just also sweet guys.
Yes, they are.
But
Yeah.
yes, and I who did Natalie or Nat King Cole was
Mm,
monumental in the history of television. You know, they didn't want him on the show on television at all because he was African American. And Betty White was one of the first people to fight for him to make sure
that's right.
that he got on TV. And I think in one of her variety shows or one of her early shows in the 50s and 60s. Larry Wilcox from Chips, I interviewed Larry Matthews. We talked about Dick Van Dyke. Just so many wonderful dudes of the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
You mentioned Mary Tyler Moore as well, and this is a fantastic one. The Mary Tyler Moore story. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, I was very, and I still am very proud of this book. Mary was a very complicated person and in many ways very similar to Elizabeth. They both had demanding fathers. They both, got stereotyped for TV shows in the 60s and the 70s. They both wanted to do, as I said before, movies that were very different. But Mary, there wasn't a lot of self-love. She was constantly having this plastic surgery and having different teeth implants, and she was adorable as she was. But as you see her in her later years, those adorable chipmunk cheeks that she had were gone. She had them eliminated for a more severe, high cheekbone look. So it always, that's one of the things that fascinated and kind of like disappointed me so much in researching this book is that she didn't understand fully the love that the others had for her, and she didn't have a lot of self-love. There was a lot going on there. And the HBO Max or HBO or just Max now as it's called is finally doing that Mary Tyler Moore documentary of their own, which I believe is airing in May. I didn't have anything to do with that documentary, but it's very, I'm just so happy that they're doing it with her husband,
Oh
Dr.
yeah, the
Stephen
doctor.
Levine. Yeah,
She's buried in Fairfield, Connecticut.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
and a beautiful resting spot where she is. You also wrote a book, NBC and Me, the time when you were. It's a page and look there. You are there. What was in the 1980s? That shot, huh?
All that hair.
In the upper right there.
Yeah, that book was the most.
You could have filled in for Denny Terrio, and you could have done Dance Fever at any time.
I definitely could have. There's no doubt about it. I love to dance. I was a
Yeah.
big disco person in the 70s.
Oh, yes,
Um, but
absolutely.
but this book is really one of my favorites because I didn't have to do any research for it. It was all in my head.
Yeah.
And I wrote it very tongue in cheek. The title alone, NBC and Me, My Life is a Page in a Book. And it's really a TV movie in the waiting. So hopefully one day there will be a TV movie about, meeting Paul McCartney, meeting Farrah Fawcett backstage at the Tonight Show. Cyndi Lauper, who is a sweetheart, and Joan Rivers and Bo Derek.
Mm.
I mean, and really, as I said earlier, anybody who was anybody in the 80s, I was blessed enough to meet them through that
Did
particular.
you get to meet some of the talk show hosts as well? The Johnny
Oh,
Carsons, the Dick
Johnny
Cabots,
Carson.
Regis, Merv, Mike, any of them through the years?
Never met Merv, but Johnny Carson definitely. He was always great to the pages. He was always wonderful to the pages. He always would say hi if we were giving tours. He'd stop and talk to the tour. If we'd go out to his parking space, even if his car wasn't there, if he'd drive up, he'd stop and talk to the tourists. He was terrific, just wonderful.
He'd pull up in that Corvette,
Corvette.
right, from Malibu
That's right. He
after
drove
playing.
himself because
He drove himself. That's right.
he didn't want to, do the whole limo thing because he came from the Midwestern mentality that,
That's right.
I'm going to drive myself to work because that's what I do. Of course, he was making $3 billion a year for 1 hour a night, 4 hours
They
a week.
right. They built that tennis court for him in his home there, and the
Right,
outside of his house there, in beautiful
right.
Malibu. I remember seeing some footage on that as well, which is kind of cool. There's this too, retroactive television, an
Yeah.
in-depth perspective on classic TV, social. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Retroactive television really is a culmination of everything I've tried to write and talk about and be and represent regarding classic TV. It talks about the positive social influence that classic TV shows have had on society. And what I mean by that is we have learned to love those who are different from us because of Bewitched and Star Trek and Life Goes On and Kung Fu. There are those who became attorneys because they were inspired by Perry Mason and LA Law. There are those who became doctors because they were inspired by Marcus Welby and ER. There were those who became scientists and secret agents
Yeah.
because of the $6 million man. And not only that, the science of cybernetics were developed because the certain scientists were inspired by the science of $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. So that's where I'm going with this book. And Spielman, who created Kung Fu, I interviewed him. I interviewed Michael Learned from the Waltons. Eric Scott, the
Yes.
great Eric Scott from the Waltons, has
Mm.
written a foreword to this book. It's about everything good that classic TV is, and everything good that TV really, if it isn't, can be. I'm just
Yeah.
so proud of it.
Right, exactly. And congratulations on that. I mentioned you even touched upon Christmas, the
Yeah.
12 best secrets of Christmas. Tell us about this.
12 Best Secrets of Christmas is about actually my life growing up in Rochester in the 60s and 70s at Christmas time. It has 12 memories of my Christmases then, with each memory being a message, with each message and memory being a chapter. And I talk about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I talk about, going to school and coming home and watching all those great specials. And actually, my Christmas TV Memories book, which I'm working on now, is about those classic Christmas specials, not just the animated shows like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Santa Claus is Coming to Town, but great TV movies like the 1973 version of Miracle on 34th Street
Oh,
with
yeah.
David Hartman. It happened one night, or excuse me, it happened one Christmas, which was Marlo Thomas's remake of It's a Wonderful Life, and the variety specials of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the Lawrence Welk shows, the Andy Williams shows, the Bob Hope specials. I just interviewed Marlo Thomas about it happened one Christmas. I interviewed Tina Cole from the King family. So it
Oh,
just
yeah.
covers the whole spectrum of classic TV specials, TV movies, TV animated shows, and I'm very excited about that.
And
I'm very excited about everything, Jim.
everything. And of course, Marlo Thomas married to Phil Donahue.
Oh,
They live, I believe it's
in New
Southport,
York.
Connecticut,
Yep,
over towards the Westport area there.
yep.
And Tina Cole, boy, we'd love to get her on the show too. She's iconic. My Three Sons and all the way
I can
up.
hook you
And
up. I'll connect you to. I mean, she is a sweetheart. I told her,
isn't she? Yeah.
everybody had a crush on you, Tina. Everybody.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
was so cool when you would see her be on My Three Sons and then the King family.
Yes.
She was one of the first people to have a presence on two different shows on essentially two different networks. Richard Anderson did that later on $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, where he played the same character on two different shows. And then when the Bionic Woman went to NBC from ABC, he played the same character on two different shows on two different networks. That was major.
Isn't that incredible?
It was historic.
What was it like hosting and co-producing, executive producing, then again with Herbie J Pilato on Amazon Prime and Shout Factory TV? That must have been cool for you.
That was a lifelong dream,
I
and
can
I
imagine.
owe
Yeah.
everything to Joel Eisenberg and Laurie Gersh Eisenberg for taking me out of semi obscurity and giving me my own TV show. What happened is I started doing these live events at the Burbank Barnes and Noble every week, where I would talk to a classic TV star like Kathy Garver, Lydia Cornell from Too Close for Comfort,
Oh,
uh,
we'd love to get her too. Yeah.
Cindy
Yeah.
Williams, Laverne Shirley, and
Cindy was
I was
wonderful.
I was doing these live events. Oh, she was just sweet.
Wasn't
And,
she?
and Joel and his wife came to those events, and at the end of the events in December of 2005, they said, "Hey, we want to turn this into a show." And I was just,
That's
and Joel was
beautiful.
also one of the executive producers on the Reels channel documentary, so I was excited to have him on that as well. I mean, he's just terrific.
We did a special tribute. I had the pleasure of meeting Cindy, and we had such a fantastic time through my friend Dan Goggin, who created Nonsense, of course.
Mm.
And she was just fantastic. And when she passed, Dan came on, and we had Tracy Reiner pop on as well to talk about the
Um,
relationship with Penny Marshall, her, of course, with her mother. Just really, really fantastic. And Cindy just funny and a dry sense of what I absolutely loved her dry humor. We clicked
absolutely.
immediately because of that dry, witty way that we
Approachable, again, accessible. And she did my
accessible.
video.
Yes.
It was really when I did my first live event book signing, Larry Edmonds. Larry Edmonds had called me, Jeff, the manager there, bookstore. He said, I want you to host Cindy Williams for a book signing. And that's really ignited my live events. And it's because of Cindy, too. She did so much for me. We would do frequent live events that led to my TV show. And I still can't believe that she is gone. I can't believe it.
No, no. We've lost so many people in the recent years. It was like one after the other. Um, you also completed a new biography on Diana Rigg. Tell us about that. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just finished that. It's in the editing stages now. She was another monumental female star of the 60s and the 70s. And, she did a lot too for females off screen. She, was really one of the first to fight for equal pay. But Diana Rigg and Sean Connery would not really have been my ideal choices for my next books. But my agent had suggested maybe you should do books about actors who became movie stars as well. So I ended up doing Diana Rigg and Sean Connery, who I both loved them dearly, but I came to love them more in writing these books about them. And, Sean had his issues too, but he did so much for charity. And Diana Rigg did so much for charity, although she was more on the quiet side. So it was really, I was honored to do those two books.
You're also working on a project, taking a look at George Lucas's incredible work and Steven Spielberg too, right? Boy, you really jump in thick when you do. I love this.
I do. I do not sleep. I really, really don't. With
What New
Lucas,
Yorker ever does.
yeah, exactly. But Lucas Spielberg, it's not going to cover their entire lives and all the movies and all the Star Wars sequels. It's going to focus on how they came together, their partnership, many of the movies they did together, and then their most iconic films, the early classics. So that's what it's going to focus on.
So is that something that is halfway done, or you're just getting
That is,
started,
I'm
or
just about halfway through that right now. The others are done, and Sean is coming out in the fall for the 40th anniversary of Never Say Never Again. Diana Rigg is going to be out in 2024, and Lucas Spielberg probably sometime in 25.
that's fantastic. That is really fantastic. I bet there's a lot of people. I mean, you can go right till you can't write anymore or type. A lot of people you still have in mind that you want to, a lot of things that you want to preserve because you are a historian as much as you are celebrating the craft and really, like I said, when you and I were going to be on today, it's going to be like two kids in a candy store speaking the same language. as much as you are a brilliant writer and producer, historian, personality, you are preserving this for those who love it, but those yet to come who will learn about all of this, right?
Well, I'd like to think so,
That's why
Jim.
you
And I
created
think,
that's the society, the Preservation Society,
yes,
right?
the classic TV
Classic.
program,
That's
yes, the classic.
fantastic.
Thank you. It went kind of, during the pandemic, because the main function, or one of the core functions, is my classic TV and self-esteem seminars that I bring to schools, colleges, and community centers. So that subsided during the pandemic because of, in-person events.
Yeah.
But that happened because of Elizabeth again, because of the charity work that she did. I knew that I
Wow.
wanted to, and usually when you form a 501c3, that's something kind of you do later in life
Yeah.
after you retire.
Yeah.
You don't really,
Foundation or something. Yeah.
yeah, you don't really do it, in the midst of your career. And it's no easy feat to form
No.
a 501c3. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that.
So, how do people get involved in that? And I mean, is there donations? Are
Yes,
there
yes,
meetings? Or how could
yes.
I'd love to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, you can contact me about we're rebuilding the website right now, but you can
Cool.
contact me through herbiejpilato.com or Facebook or Instagram.
All there is.
And
Yeah.
and right now we're searching for a theater, and we have found one actually. We're just about to sign the contract where I will host monthly classic TV screenings with stars, talk about the episodes we're watching, and talk about the meaning of those shows, in addition to the seminars that I bring to schools, colleges, community centers, business centers, family centers, community centers, senior centers around the country, really, wherever I'm
Veronica,
called.
I was just about to say because some of those iconic figures also, did their thing in LA and then they came back to the East Coast or the Midwest. Or
Right.
do you see yourself coming to New York and other areas doing maybe some of those as well?
Absolutely. I started doing them in Rochester, and I've done them here in LA, but I will go wherever I'm called.
Have you
You
been to
know,
the Lucy and Desi Museum
no, I
in
have not.
Celeron and Jamestown?
I have not, but I would. Jamestown is relatively close to
It's right,
Rochester, so
right
that was
there.
always a nice feeling when I heard that Lucy was from Jamestown. No, but I will. I have to. I
Mm.
haven't. I'm lucky if I can get to the grocery store.
At this point, so busy. The we just had Carolyn Palmer on. She's an acclaimed sculptor in New York City, and she's the one who did the bronze statue, the second one of Lucille Ball
Oh,
in Celeron, New York. Remember, first they had
mhm.
the first one, which people didn't react too nicely to. She
Yeah.
was brought in to create that iconic one, and many other figures, popes and everything else. She was just on as well, and yeah, it's really amazing. Lucy Arnaz keeps the flame lit for Lucy and Desi with all these iconic tributes and movies and people. I asked her, what do you think it is about this resurrection of love for Lucy and Desi and all of it? And she said it was simple, it was warm, it was real, it wasn't heavy, it wasn't political, it was, everyday things and the iconic actors and actresses and the writers and the producers. And it's just one of those rare
Yeah,
things. And the three camera setup as well, which they sort of created.
with Harry Ackerman, absolutely. And Lucy Arnaz, I interviewed her and Desi Arnaz Jr. for my tribute to Here's Lucy, which is my favorite of the Lucy shows. I know that might be surprising to some people because so many people love I Love Lucy and they think that is their. But Here's Lucy is the one I grew up with. I didn't grow up
Gail
in the
Gordon. Yeah.
Gal Gordon,
Mrs. Carmichael.
well, Mrs. Carmichael was from the Lucy show. It was
That's a Lucy show. That's right. He
Lucy
was
Carter, Lucy
Carter.
Carter, and then she was Lucy Barker on the last show, Life of Lucy,
Life.
which did not have a chance, and it was not given the chance it should have had.
And it really affected her deeply, didn't it?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
she
Because that,
she was brokenhearted by that, and ABC did not treat her well at all. And the show was getting better in those last couple episodes. It was finding itself. They brought Audrey Meadows as
that's
like,
right.
right. It was she realized that it needed to be more of an ensemble show like the Golden Girls. That she couldn't do the Lucy stuff that much anymore anyway. She needed more. And it was finding that voice, it was finding its narrative. And ABC dumped it.
I know. That's the crazy stuff about the industry. Sometimes, well, I think I had heard that The Odd Couple, another beloved series, Tony Randall, Jack Klugman, etc., wasn't a hit in the beginning, and ABC was considering canceling it. But then, I mean, it's a hit in reruns, but in the beginning, it didn't take off right away.
Well, what happened was, and they did this with Happy Days as well, and it was also Jerry Paris, who was, Jerry Helper on the Dick Van Dyke Show, went on to be a director. So yes, ABC was going to cancel The Odd Couple, and Jerry's like, well, wait a minute, why don't we, instead of film it like a half-hour movie, let's film it in front of a live audience, and that'll maybe up the ante a little bit, up the energy. Jack Klugman and Tony Randall didn't like that first season. I love it. I prefer it. And just like Happy Days, the first season and a half was done in front of or it was done as a half-hour movie and filmed without an audience. But ABC was going to cancel that until they said, wait a minute, let's, bring out Fonzie more and let's put the show, again, directed by Jerry Paris, in front of a live audience, make it a 3-camera show. And that saved it. Fonzie saved it. And Happy Days went on to become the legend that it did. But I love the first year and a half of Happy Days and the first season of Odd Couple more because it's cozier, it's sweeter, years. And I love Happy Days, don't get me wrong. But everybody, when you act in front of an audience, you become conscious of the audience, and everybody's playing to the audience in the later years, whereas they're playing to the camera in the first season and a half of Happy Days.
And sometimes you could have shows where there's too much. Every time somebody walks in a room, there's all this clapping constantly and yelling and cheering, and that can sort of sometimes get in the way of it all a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. But still iconic shows we're talking about here that have stood the test of time. Every once in a while, they do remakes of things. And like, for example, one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite actors, Jack Lemmon, and in The Out of Towners with Sandy Dennis. And then they made a remake of it, and I don't think it was as well received. There's just something about the time period, Jack Lemmon with his idiosyncrasies and mannerisms, Sandy Dennis, the time period of the late 60s, early 70s in New York City, the Quincy Jones soundtrack, Neil Simon's writing. It gelled, and it's tough to remake some of these things, right? The shows, the movies, the TV series.
What happened was the Brady Bunch movie comes out in 1995, and they make a satire of it because the Brady Bunch, what it became from the one it debuted in 69 to 1995, when the movie came out, what it became was something different than what it started out to be. It became satirical, loving the Brady Bunch, you know what I mean, as you watched it. So the movie was really a satire about the Brady Bunch. So everybody in Hollywood said, hey, if we do a movie remake of a TV show, let's make it a satire because it worked for the Brady Bunch. So they turned all these movies into satires or to jokes or into comedies, except for The Fugitive, which was terrific with Harrison Ford, and the Addams Family movies were terrific. But they started turning them into jokes. And also, too, instead of respecting the original mythology of what made the shows great and special, they tried to put a different edge or a different twist, to make it adaptable for the 90s or the 21st century, thinking that, that if you kept to the original concept, it wouldn't work. And that's just not true. Millions and millions and millions of people loved The Fugitive. So the producers of that movie were smart enough to say, okay, let's not mess with the format. Let's make it just like the show, but with a contemporary feel. Not change in the mythology, not make it too edgy, but modernize it, yes, but still respecting the original mythology and the source material, which many of these remakes do not. and they turn it into something else. And it's like, hey, if you want to do something else, then don't do that. Then do something of your own creation, but don't mess with, what worked because you want to do something different and put your name on it and make it yours. Come up with your own stuff. Leave classic TV alone.
Have you ever thought of writing a sitcom or a drama yourself?
Absolutely. I have a couple in development in my head, and I had wanted for the longest time to write an episode of Touched by an Angel that was just based on my experience with my dad and my mom, who I served as a primary caregiver for. So yes, I might still turn that Touched by an Angel script into something else and rework it. We'll see. But certainly, I'd love to do a TV movie on NBC and Me again, or on my Christmas book, The 12 Best Secrets of Christmas. That screams TV movie. So,
Absolutely.
and I do have one director interested in that. He loved the book. He said it was terrific. So that's closer than the NBC and Me TV movie from happening right now.
Any shows over the years that maybe the public liked them, but they weren't your forte, or maybe just nobody really liked them? Any that you look at? Because they do have, I think there are some things on YouTube where some people compile these lists of shows that were one-hit wonders or never took off or just were not so great. Are there any that come to mind that just didn't tickle your fancy, Herbie J?
Yeah, I never got Two and a Half Men. I never got How I
How
Met
I
Your
Met Your
Mother,
Mother?
How I Met Your Mother. I didn't see everything. Again, it was sarcastic and mean spirited, and everything was sexual, or it was just too much. It's like, why that '70s show? Okay, the marijuana thing was funny in the first couple episodes, but every week. You get high every week. So I don't know. I mean, look, a lot of talent, every to each his own. But if I'm flipping through the channels and I see that '70s show, or I'm going to watch a real '70s show, or if I see How I Met Your Mother, I'm going to watch that girl.
Mm.
Well, two of the shows that I think were the last great sitcoms um, of television were The New Gidget, because it was the last time they made a traditional sitcom in filmed like a movie with Karen Richmond. Frasier, which I think has the most amazing writing, sets, acting, directing, designs, scripts across the board.
And are they remaking that? Is
They're,
there talk of a remake with that?
they're rebooting
Rebooting
it.
it?
But from what I understand, just like when Frasier left Cheers and did a whole new thing with Frasier, he's going to leave the Frasier format and create a whole other Frasier with a new bunch of characters, which I think is very wise. But then there's Reba. To me, is the last great
Oh,
family
yes.
sitcom.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
And
She
she
really is. Yeah. Yeah.
the whole cast on
Yeah.
that show. So to me, Frasier, the last great sophisticated sitcom, the last great sitcom in general. Reba, the last great family sitcom. The New Gidget, the last great traditional sitcom filmed in front without an audience.
We had The New Gidget. We had Jill Jacobson on the show as well, and she was fantastic because she was involved with that as well. And then, of course, celebrating her 90th, Carol Burnett and the Carol Burnett Show. You still look at those skits with Harvey Korman and Tim Conway and Vicki Lawrence and Carol. And
Harvey Korman
uh,
is one of the most underrated performers in the history of TV. Elizabeth is turning 92. That's part of the connection with the documentary. She would have been 90 years old on Saturday, April 15th. The documentary is airing on April 16th, the day after. That's usually when Reel shows their documentaries.
did you like the shows like the Donnie and Marie's, Captain and Tennille, Sonny and Cher, and all of that genre?
I loved Sonny and Cher, loved Donnie and Marie. But then when they started doing, you know, Tony, Orlando, and John, and Captain and Tennille, they took these. Oh, okay, so Sonny and Cher, who was a musical duo, could have their own variety show. Well, then so can Captain and Tennille. Well, no. You know, Sonny and Cher were magical performers together for a reason. You just can't duplicate it. Tony, Orlando, and Dawn was okay, but Sonny and Cher was the ultimate musical comedy team. Even after they got divorced and the show became something else. But that first couple years of the Sonny and Cher show, oh, terrific, terrific.
Wanted to bring out a couple of quick things here before we wrap. We have the I Dreamy Genie bottle here. Huh?
Wow.
This was a gift from a friend who had it, you know, it was custom made. And
is that Mario Della Casa by any chance?
It's very, very nice, very heavy. You know, nobody touch it but me. Don't drop it. And amazing, a little trivia, of course, as you know, fashioned after the Jim Beam liquor bottle is what they used for the prototype when they were doing it for the series, right? The liquor bottle. They needed to come up with a bottle for our Jimmy Genie, and there was a Jim Beam bottle shaped like this, and which is actually a very fancy liquor bottle, and they used that as the sort of prototype for the resulting I Dream of Genie Barbara Eden bottle, right? And we had Dream of Denver here as well, wife, of course, you know, of Bob Denver. And she saw the set and the different things on it. She said, you know, you're missing something, Jim. And I said, what's that, Dreamer? She said, you got to have a Gilligan. We got to send you a Gilligan. Aloha, Jim, Dream of Denver. Another. So Gilligan was here and he says hello to you, Herbie J. And Don Full of Love, of course, from the Back to the Future movies. Mayor Goldie Wilson stopped by.
Wow.
He says, well, you got a Gilligan, you've got to get a Mayor Goldie Wilson. So he sends that along. And somebody else iconic who's always on our show, because my Aunt Lillian, one of my mother's sisters, collected dolls of all kinds and had them in a special room, spent thousands of dollars on them in her home in West Hartford, Connecticut. And this got passed down to me. Mr. George Burns is with us as well.
That's great.
With his cigar and his red hanky. I tell you, who are some other folks over the years that you got a chance? And he sends his love from Gracie, and he's absolutely loved this conversation. Who are some other folks that you've had an opportunity to meet over the years that exceeded your, you know, like Carol Burnett and Florence Henderson, when meeting them, they met, if not exceeded, what you would hope they would be like. Affable, like you say, Cindy Williams, warm, funny, real, affable, approachable, no ego, none of that, no, you know, limos and all that stuff, real people. How about for you?
Well, you know, William Shatner, I'd wanted to meet for the longest time. I interviewed him for a Star Trek tribute for the Television Academy that we did in 2016 for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. And so I was doing one of the collector shows, one of the autograph shows that he also happened to be at. So I was signing my books and whatnot, and he was signing his photos and books as well. And there was a point where he took a break and I took a break, and we went to the green room at the show, and I walked in to the green room, and there he was. It was just me and Bill Shatner in the green room. I could not believe it. I walked in like, oh my gosh. So I, of course, had to go up to him. He could not have been nicer. I said, hi, Mr. Shatner. I'm Herbie J Pilato. I interviewed for the television. Okay. Hi, Herbie. I said, I want to give you this book that I gave him, my Marriage Hell and More book. I said, I want you to have it. I just want you to know how much you've... He was sweet as pie. And this is a moment where he was trying really to relax from just meeting everybody who's probably been telling him the same thing that I just told him. But he didn't push me away, nothing. He was sweet as all get out.
Tell us about the extraordinary room that you're in. It looks like you're surrounded by lots of memorabilia there yourself, Herbie J.
Yes. There's DVDs and books and Blu-rays, and I got a couple laser discs somewhere. This is where it all happens, and it's. I always want the light in front of me, so the window is in front of me, and I knew that I had to have some kind of, let's see if we can maybe look at the, yeah, there's Elizabeth, a great shot of her. Those are from my live events that I did at the Barnes and Noble. That's from over here up there in the, where is it? This way, right there, right there. That's from my live event for the Marriage Heather Moore book that I did at the Cerritos beautiful library in Cerritos, California. So yeah, it each holds a special spot, along with my dad right there over here on top of this book, because I'm not coordinated that way.
Did
So
your
it's,
family, your folks, your dad and all, did they get a chance to see some of this success that came your way?
they got a chance to see my original Bewitched book and my Kung Fu Book of Cain and my Kung Fu Book of Wisdom. And while I was researching the Bionic book, Richard Anderson invited me on the set of Bionic Ever After, which was the last Bionic reunion movie. And my dad was sick at the time. And I didn't know if I could go or not. I said, how could I leave my dad? And my dad, in his oxygen, with his oxygen tank and the oxygen in his nose, he says, "You go, Herbie J. You go do what you got to do." And he reached into his pocket. This is 1995. He reached into his pocket and he, gave me $20 bill. That was a lot of money to my dad. You know what I mean? He came from the Depression. He didn't have nothing. He gave me that $20, and he says, "Here, take this. You might need a couple extra dollars." It was an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's the way they did it. That's
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 the
that
way.
generation. That's the way they did it. Yeah.
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 So that $20 could just have easily been, in my mind, $20,000.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We would go to Shea Stadium and see the Mets, and that was, not too far of a drive from Long Island. And back then, of course, different world. And my dad would get the general admission, and then we'd be taken up some ramp. There'd be a chain link fence. There'd be an usher who was standing there, usually an older gentleman. The older gentleman would never turn around to look at us, but he had his hat, he had his beautiful uniform, and my father would take. I don't know what it is about the $20 bills, but they're magic. Would take a $20 bill out of the wallet, fold it between the fingers. Suddenly it was going through the chain link fence little angle, and all you saw was this older gentleman take that, cup it, put in his pocket, the gate opened, and he's dusting off box seats. It was a different world, you know what I mean? It was a different and then his company eventually, had the box seats, but before they did, yeah, it was a different time and cool stuff. We're talking about, a lot of innocence. We're talking about a time when things seemed a little bit simpler, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you like these shows, it's not Pollyanna, it's not idealistic per se. It's something that offers a certain feeling, a certain continuity, a certain rhythm, a certain foundation, a certain humanity, a certain warmth that all of these shows and series and movies and comedies and dramas bring to the table as part of why they're still here. There's just something, even from generation to generation, as other generations pass away and the new generations are exposed to this material, it's such a part of Americana and so invaluable and so important. And you're living it and preserving it. And I celebrate it right there with you, Herbie J. And I think it's fantastic.
Oh, Jim, well, thank you very much. I mean, he's such a wonderful host, and thank you for believing in classic TV and in me and what I've done. I mean, I'm very honored that you asked me on the show and that you gave me this opportunity to talk about, the things that matter to me, and hopefully to bring a little light, to whoever's listening, and maybe those who maybe never watched classic TV will watch your show now and have a new love for it, or find a love for it.
Exactly. That's what it was the guests that say we're sort of bringing back that lost art of conversation here, Kevin and Carson style, and to have you on to talk about all of these incredible shows and your love for the people involved, and as you write about it. And again, you've worked in television as an executive, you've been a personality, you're still in the thick of all of this work, and celebrating it in the way that you do. I think it's really absolutely spectacular. We are going to keep the porch light on for you. You're welcome back here anytime, Herbie J. Spread the word about the Jim Masters Show Live series. We would absolutely love that. If you know other folks that you think would like to pop on for the experience. You and I, of course, said we do maybe about an hour. We've done about almost 2. Could you imagine that?
We did?
Well, you take 2 New Yorkers, you put them together, look what happens. It's like we need a pot of coffee going. It's about an hour and 49, and not bad. But there is a record on this show. You'd appreciate this. People say, well, yeah, because I let it run. If a guest has a half hour, we do that. If they have an hour, we don't script, and it's conversational. But say it was a lot of people say, well, who was on the show the longest time wise? Say there is a record yet to be broken. And we had actor Scott Schwartz on from, of course, The Toy with Jackie Gleason and Richard Pryor. And he was a kid in A Christmas Story. They got his tongue stuck on the pole.
Right.
And it was during the beginning of the pandemic. And so, he had a lot to share and a lot to say. And a lot of those autograph shows were closed and shut. So if anybody goes back to see it, it's one of the earlier episodes of our show. He just opens up about his entire life, every aspect of it, even when he was a kid in New Jersey growing up. And we were talking White Castle hamburgers and just all kinds of stuff. 6 hours live.
What?
It went to midnight. Yes. And we had some guests, or not guests, viewers, our lovely viewers, watching in later time zones in Europe. They went to bed, woke up, and we were still on. It was like a Jerry Lewis telethon. It was like but it was cool. It was just, we're chatting, and it was fantastic. This is interesting. Jen Barry's watching Pennsylvania. She had a quick question. Do you have a favorite cartoon hero of all the cartoons? They were a part of the
absolutely. The Herculoids. I love the Herculoids. They were, again, a family.
Yeah.
And they were protecting their island or their planet. That was their home. And they weren't superheroes themselves, but they had those superhero animals.
Yes.
The dragon and the thing, with the thing.
Yes.
And the Gloop and Gleep, those
oh yes.
And then they had those power stones that they would. It was just the sense of family, and that they were humans and yet superheroes, and they were the only humanoids on the planet. But I love the Herculoids. I love Johnny Quest.
Johnny Quest.
I mean, that first season only, the original, is the best. Voiced by Tim Matheson, who has done every major TV show or movie ever made. Whatever movie you watch or TV show, Tim Matheson has done it. He's, by the way, also a wonderful guy. Johnny Quest, the Herculoids.
Wacky Racers was another one.
What is that?
Wacky Racers was another one.
Racers,
Underdog.
Archie. I love the Archies.
The Archies.
Sugar.
Yes, that's right.
Best songs ever. Ron Dante, who did my live event shows. He also did my pilot for my show. Super guy.
I think he's being inducted into something, a Music Hall of Fame or something he mentioned recently, which I think the song is.
Okay.
Which is so cool. That's great stuff, huh?
Yeah.
And then, of course, HR Puffin stuff. And boy, we could do hours on all
Land
these.
of the Lost. Oh my gosh.
Land of the Lost.
Oh,
yes.
The writing was better than many, if not all, of the evening shows on.
Wesley Yore. And we had Sid Croft on, of course, from Croft Productions, Sid and Marty Croft, and all of those specials and shows and everything. Like I said, we're kids in a candy store, Mr. Pilato, and we will have to have you back. This really was a fantastic conversation on so many different levels. And our audience, our viewers, the Lovely Squad, they've been commenting throughout the show as well. Matter of fact, I'll just pop a few nice little words in here. Jen Berry in Pennsylvania says, Herbie, you are now a lovety, which Herbie is awesome. Yes, land of the lost. Jane watching in Sweden says, thank you, Herbie, for being here tonight. So interesting to hear about your work. Thank you, Jim. Kathleen in New York City. It's a great conversation tonight. Thank you both. Merlin in Ontario, Canada. Thanks, Herbie, for joining us in Lovety Hall. Very interesting life. Sherry Larson in Kansas, USA. Thank you, Herbie, for being here with us tonight. You took me down memory lane. So many wonderful shows. Your books sound so amazing. Can't wait to get my hands on them.
Thank
Good
you.
stuff. And website, folks, as well, is his name, of course, with the J, no period. And we're going to tell you a little quick story on that. So it's Herbie J Pilato, there it is, .com, the website, see all the books and everything. Tell us about the Herbie J without the period, because a lot of people probably put that there thinking grammatically it's there, but there's a story you have on that, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I was born Herbie. They wanted to name me after my father, Herbie. So my mother says, now, wait a minute. If I call Herbie, you're both are going to answer. So, we got to, okay. My father says, let's put the middle initial J from his middle name, James, in there and call him Herbie J. So that week at the racetrack, and my father loved the races like Elizabeth, there was a horse running called Herbie J, only Jay. They bet it. This was 1960. They bet it, and it paid $200. And that was a lot of money in 1960 for my parents at the time.
Yeah.
And actually, my father's original name was Pompey.
Yes.
But it was this beautiful Pompey Pilato. But he changed it because everybody was always making fun of it. And I'm like, Dad, so you change your name to Herbie and then you give it to me? So, and people made fun of that too. Herbie Derby, Herbert Sherbert, Herbie the Love Bug.
The Love Bug, yep.
Herbie J kind of just stands out from the pack. And so that's the story of Herbie J.
Makes sense. I'm James, Dad's James, his father's James, his father's James. I'm the fifth, but
well, I'm not a junior. I'm not a junior.
You're not a junior, right?
That's the difference. It's not Herbert.
You're not the junior.
I'm Herbie because my father's middle name ultimately became Pompey. So he was Herbie Pompey Pilato. I'm Herbie James Pilato / Herbie J.
So as a kid, my dad, we're all James, but he uses Jim. So Jimmy to make that differentiation between the two, which is kind of cool. Again, growing up out east on Long Island, everybody was Jimmy and Stevie and Bobby and Cindy and Greggy and Petey, and even Agnes said she wanted to be called Aggie. I mean, it was like everything was IE or Y at the end. As we had our Pop-Tarts and Jiffy Pop, watching all these iconic shows and drinking the Nestle
and milk and Pop-Tarts.
Yes, and the Nestle's Quick and all that stuff. You're the best. Crisp cereal, Crisp versus Quake. You are fantastic. Thanks for all the time, Herbie J. Really appreciate it. And you're welcome back anytime. And truly, I hope the show met whatever expectations you had and you enjoy the time with me as much as I absolutely have with you today.
Exceeded expectations. Exceeded. God bless you, Jim. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all the joy that you bring to the world. Thank you for being classic TV itself as well, for doing everything that classic TV shows did and do. Bring light and love to the world.
I appreciate that, my friend. New friend made. Let's definitely stay in touch. And I hope if I'm out on the West Coast on a TV shoot or you're back East, let us know and break bread. I would love that.
Terrific. I would love it too.
All right, Herbie J. Go stretch those legs now.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for all the nice comments.
All right. You're a lovety, as they say. And we'll chat again soon. You take care.
Peace.
Bye-bye now. Herbie J Pilato. Yes, isn't that incredible? What a fantastic conversation. Somebody who's truly preserving and celebrating classic television and so much more, and all the stars and all the people who really made it happen. Some of your favorite iconic TV series that are still beloved today, newer shows as well, we touched upon, and of course, movies, all the celebrities, the producers. The music, the theme songs, and so much more. He's in the thick of it as a television historian, television executive, writer, producer, host. You've seen him on television. Reels, don't forget that is coming up just a matter of days on the Reels channel. That fabulous documentary that's going to be celebrating, of course, Elizabeth and Bewitched and so much more. Again, he's involved in a lot. He's working on material about George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and iconic people that have touched him, but at the same time, he realizes have touched the masses. Hopefully that's what we do here at the Jim Masters Show. As I mentioned, we don't really call this an interview show. It's more conversational talk show style, like the older school Cavett, Carson sort of series, but with a modern vibe and a modern twist of today. Different, unique, not scripted, no teleprompter, no questions. He had no idea what I was going to ask. I didn't know how he was going to answer, and that's free flowing. And that's what I love about what we do here at JMS. If you love it, let us know. Give us a like on our episode. It's very easy to do that. Interact with us. We're very interactive here at the Jim Masters Show. We love all the interaction. What you could do is there is a little icon that's a thumbs up icon that looks like that right on the YouTube channel. Click that. That lets us know that you enjoyed this episode. Leave a comment in the comment section for us as well, which is underneath this episode and the over 900 plus episodes we have of this series so far in just 3 years or so. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. The show is the Jim Masters Show Live, entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series. You don't have to worry about saying all that. The YouTube channel is Jim Masters TV, and the show is the Jim Masters Show. This was absolutely fantastic. And again, we really thank Herbie J Pilato for joining us, TV historian, writer, producer, pop culture expert extraordinaire, TV executive, personality, lover of all things TV and more, pop culture. Just some of the incredible works that you can look out for. All of these available at his website and all the usual places where you can find books, Amazon and so much more. And we're just really scratching the surface here for you folks. And he's working on so much more material. And he's even got the Christmas material out, and he's working on a new CD, which we're excited about. We'll tell you more about that. He'll keep me posted. I'll keep you updated. We'll have him back as well. Maybe we'll have him back to sing Christmas carols with us at Christmas time. I'm sure, he's a trooper. He would do it, I don't doubt. Great stories, iconic behind the scenes stories, and of course, paying homage to the incomparable Elizabeth Montgomery, as well as all these other iconic figures that we've been talking about. Go to his website, check it all out. Really a great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know. Give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe, comment, all the rest. We're so excited because we have so many more incredible guests lined up for you as well. So stay tuned. You can check the YouTube channel to find out who and when. I'm on social media as well at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Jim Masters TV. You guys know around here, we don't say goodbye. We say see you later. Take care. Ciao, cheers, sláinte, shalom. Auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, moi loop. Cheerio, take care, be well, and don't forget to love one another and take care of one another and celebrate classic TV and celebrate life. It's worth living. And if there's anything we've learned the last couple of years about life, it's short, it's precious, and it's valuable. So let's celebrate it together. Thanks to all of you for your love and support of our series. It takes a village. It's a lot of work behind the scenes to put it together because you guys know I work full time in the industry and then come here, sit in this chair and turn these lights on and we make our magic. But knowing you're out there and you're watching and enjoying makes a world of difference. Thanks for all the love as well. And all these great comments coming in. If you didn't get a chance to comment while the show was on live, comment in the comment section. We really appreciate that. One more thanks to Herbie J. And of course, we thank all of you for joining us here on the Jim Masters Show. We will be back tomorrow as well. Another great guest and many, many more right here for you on JMS. Spread the word. Let everybody know about our series. Share the links on your social media. Thanks to those of you who've been doing that. We appreciate that as well. We'll see you on the next one. Jim Masters here, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, I'll be right here waiting for you in this chair. I might change my outfit, but I'll still be here waiting for you in this host chair on the Jim Masters Show. See you on the next one. Be well, gang. Cheers.